What's up, everybody? So, what is the law of attraction, actually? We got introduced to this well over a decade when that famous movie and book came out. And, in my opinion, really promoted a lot of what I would call the law of attachment in how they promoted it and marketed it. And what I'm seeing and what I think a lot of people are starting to recognize and realize these days is that there is no secret to the law of attraction. It has always been what has been going on. We've always been attracting into our lives perfectly in terms of what is in alignment with our belief system. More so than that, what is in alignment with our personal unconscious identity that we've identified with and that we've created for ourselves. So instead of law of attraction from the space of trying to use it and practice it with these methods of let me feel and visualize what I want in order for it to manifest, consider the possibility that you might not really know what you actually want. And what you want is being, or what you think you want is being derived from that identity that you've been living out of unconsciously, which is more so than not, for most people, an identity of unworthiness and not good enough. And that shows up in many forms. So I'll use 3 examples in terms of how that shows up. You've got a belief of I'm unworthy, I'm not good enough. And you're not conscious to it, but you're living from that in an unconscious way. It's called being asleep. So if I'm unworthy, I'm always going to be attracting experiences in my life which are going to be promoting, reinforcing, and delivering that experience of unworthiness. So unworthiness could be expressed and experienced through something as extreme as becoming homeless, on drugs, down and out completely, to, let's say, the middle of the road where you're just getting by, you're surviving, you're living a mediocre life where you're paying the bills, you're able to go on a vacation here and there, but ultimately there's no sense of satisfaction, peace, happiness, joy, fulfillment. And it's just kind of like, So there's still an unworthiness that's driving that. Then you've got the other extreme, from homelessness to superachiever, accomplishing a lot, what the world would consider to be successful, with a lot of titles, degrees, money, material things, the status, all these things, but really, honestly, internally, there's an emptiness, there's a misery, there's a suffering that goes on, and the person is in a constant prison of trying to prove their worth in terms of what they can achieve and what they can accomplish and what they can attain. And it keeps reinforcing the whole belief of unworthiness because you're trying to prove your worth. So then we've got the law of attraction, and that's showing up in a way of how it was presented so tactfully, or I don't know, I guess intentionally from a marketing standpoint, to accommodate the perceived wants and desires of society and how society has been conditioned and what society has been conditioned intellectually and emotionally to want and think they need in order to be living what is considered to be a 10 life. The relationship, the money, the career, the house, the car, the vacations, all of these things. And yet I'm going to assert that in and of itself is still coming from a place of lack and unworthiness and not good enough. And it shows up in the sense of, well, if you could have anything and if nothing could get in your way and if you could not fail, what would that look like? So your answer and your idea of what that looks like is automatically going to be coming from whatever identity you're living out of. if you're still living out of the identity of unworthiness and not good enough, and that has not been dealt with, you have not forgiven yourself, I mean on the level of unconscious and subconscious, emotional level, you're still going to filter your idea of what you think you want and what your idea of a 10 perfect life is through that belief of you not being good enough, which is going to continue to cycle through. And then, so what I'm noticing is a lot of people in transformation and personal development have been doing this cycle for decades now. And they're really not getting anywhere as far as a genuine sense of fulfillment. There's always this constant state of chasing after something. And I see it. And of course, just like anything, the ego is going to be like, no, I'm fulfilled, I'm happy, I'm living an amazing life, I'm transformed, etc., etc. But there's something in their behavior, in their way of being, in the way that they live their life and how they show up that would say otherwise. In fact, it would scream otherwise. It's obvious. So the whole point to this is, what is the purpose of attraction? The law of attraction is obvious. It's always there. But what's the purpose of attraction? And how can we use that to our advantage to actually heal and purify and clear out any belief about ourselves that has nothing to do with who we actually are in truth? And I'm talking about who we are in the sense of actually being whole, like really living from wholeness. Because we're already whole. There's nothing we can do about that. Our wholeness will always be there, and nothing we choose to believe about ourselves can affect that. We can only experience the effects of the belief, but the wholeness stays. So we're actually using our wholeness to create a belief and an experience of being not whole or incomplete to some degree, as an example. If we can get real with ourselves honestly and how we are actually living out of an addiction in terms of what we think we want and what we think we need in order to be living a fulfilled life, then we could actually start experiencing peace and happiness and joy and fulfillment and gratitude for what those things actually are in their essence, in their purity, which they are unconditional. They are not predicated by needing a circumstance or a result or an event or a situation to occur. They're not results oriented. You want peace? Get present in the moment. If you're truly able to access presence without your conditioning of the past getting in the way, which is the case all the time, then you would be able to experience peace for what it is. Peace is right now, literally. It's always available. Happiness is right now. Joy is right now. Gratitude is right now. These are states of being that are natural and effortless for us. The only thing that's getting in the way is our conditioning emotionally to what we've identified with as not being good enough and needing something in order to feel good enough, which only reinforces the belief of not being good enough. So if we could just tackle that and use life, you don't need to do these medicine ceremonies. Believe me, I've gone through all of that. Trust me. And you're going to do what you're going to do regardless. And it might be the perfect stepping stone to get you to that realization that you don't need to do it. But honestly, you don't need medicine. You don't need a chant. You don't need some kind of ritual to go through. These things can be useful only for the purpose of reminding yourself as to what you are actually committed to in the silence and privacy of your own personal mind, internally, in the silence of your own heart. Getting clear on what do I really want? What I really want, if you really get down to it, is peace and happiness. Now, is peace and happiness really wrapped up in the kind of life that I think I want, which is being projected from an unworthiness belief about myself? How could that provide peace and happiness? How could I even access peace and happiness in the sense of, let me be peaceful and happy so that generates my doingness to eventually have what I say I want. In that model, it only cancels itself out because you're literally motivated to be however you think you need to be in order to have what you think you want to have. And if you haven't cleared out the unworthiness, I mean like at the real level, the root, the unconscious, subconscious level, you're just going to be spinning in the same place over and over again, convincing yourself that you've made transformation happen, convincing yourself that you've woken up, because these are all clever terms that we've learned intellectually that the ego likes to take a hold of and use as an identity as well to avoid doing the work. I see it all the time. I myself have done it a lot. So I'm telling you, if you could really get the essence of forgiveness and what that is and practice it wholeheartedly because you want nothing else other than a genuine sense of peace that literally passes all understanding, and a genuine happiness that is unconditional. I mean, like, circumstance after circumstance could show up and your peace and your happiness would be unshakable. That kind of peace and happiness. If you could use your life to constantly look at yourself in terms of what your reactions are, what your responses are, what your perceptions are, where your judgments are, you could actually start forgiving yourself an experience, all experiences that are anything less than peace. But this requires a real brutal honesty, like a personal honesty, a coming to Jesus, so to speak, with yourself. And then when you can access your nature, I guess, if you will, from forgiveness, from really being honest with yourself and living out of that state that is effortless and always available in the present moment of peace and happiness and joy, gratitude, fulfillment, which are not required to have a circumstance or an event or a result of any kind for them to be, then life will show up in conjunction with that. Then you'll experience law of attraction in its perfection. But we're trying to trick ourselves based on some information that we've learned about law of attraction. And we're trying to go about it in a backwards way, a back-ass way. And that's why most people out there who have been doing this work, who continue to come back to communities or workshops or trainings or ceremonies over and over and over again, all they're doing is just intellectually conditioning themselves to more information and identifying with that and not really getting to the root. It's like you're turning that into an addiction in and of itself. That becomes a dopamine fix for you. And you're not really experiencing the true levels of bliss that are available to us if we actually got real with the work in terms of what that actually is. And that is always available to us in life, because life is only always reflecting back to us our own consciousness. Nothing is ever happening to us. We're only creating our experience of life based on how we have chosen to condition our own consciousness, based on how we have chosen to see ourselves unlike who we actually are. And that is always going to be reflected back to you through people, places, things, events, all circumstances, all aspects of life. And until we can actually get real with that and honest with ourselves and have the courage to face it and feel what needs to be felt in terms of possible pain and discomfort, that is really the gateway, that's really the medicine to letting go of fear, to letting go of doubt, to letting go of judgment, because all these things are self-created. All these things are generated from us really thinking that we're not good, hating ourselves in some way, shape, or form. Challenge me. I request you to challenge me. I invite you to. And we'll work through this. Because I'm not here to try and be right. I'm not here to try and tell you that you're wrong. I'm not here to try and make a point in terms of my own ego aggrandizement. I'm here to really get to the bottom of it. Because I want the best life possible. And I'm understanding, because I've had all these things. I've had the relationships. I've had the money. I've had the car. I've had the house. I've had all the material stuff. I've had the status. I've had all that shit. And really, it's nothing. It's not shit, but it's nothing. I mean, we can have it. We can use it. It doesn't make it wrong. It's not wrong or right. But literally, it's neutral. It's innocent. All things are neutral and all things are innocent. And when we can get to that reality, that true realization, then we can start living life to the fullest. We won't be bound in our own self-manufactured prisons of wants and needs based on beliefs that have been undealt with about ourselves. This is about waking up to our wholeness, where we can see that we don't need anything outside of us. Never have. And when we can get that, then we can actually experience what it is to live in the cliche that's been thrown around throughout history. Living in heaven on earth. Living and accessing the heaven within, the heaven that we are. But we've got to do the work personally by clearing away, by being honest about what is in the way of that, what we have placed in the way of that. Not what my parents or my ancestors or my neighbor or the president or anyone else has done to me, but really about me even thinking that something can be done to me and then avoiding the work altogether by placing it on someone else. How clever is that? How clever is that? So the time is really now, and it's our opportunity to look at all the things that we've tried to do the last few decades with this self-help, personal development, transformation, spirituality, yoga, all these things that have been turned into trends, all these things that have really been around since the ancient days, which were developed originally for the intention to wake up, but have been twisted into the ego's needs of creating another identity out of lack, out of an unwillingness to really do the work, out of an unwillingness to really face our own fears, our own doubts, our own so-called ugliness, which really isn't ugliness. It's perfect because we've chosen it and we've created an experience of it. And that actually shows our power. So it's really awesome. And this is what I'm up to right now. I have, since I was 30, really committed to my own healing. And boy, I've gone through a gamut of stuff. I've had a lot of experiences. I'm not there yet. I'm not fully cooked, but I'm touching on it a lot more lately than ever before. And it's amazing. And it's so much easier than what we have been taught, what we have been trying to do in terms of all these techniques and methods and formulas and philosophies and things like that out there. It really is. And so I'm here committed to my own waking up, my own genuine peace, unconditional happiness, unconditional love for myself. So you can say, honestly, I'm really being selfish in the highest sense of what that is. But in that highest sense of selfishness for myself, everyone wins. That's the beauty of it. That's what true creativity is. That's what real vision is. Vision is not based on what I think the world should be based on my unresolved lack, because that's only, again, going to be teaching more of the same lack in a very disguised way. In a disguised way of like, oh, look at me, I'm being spiritual, I'm being in service. I mean, all these things can be turned into masks, and all too often they are. But it's when we have the wherewithal to actually get real with ourselves and see that we're doing it, see that nothing else is doing it but us, then we have the opportunity in every moment to wake up, to use every situation in life that we have a reaction to or that we have a judgment on as just that, an opportunity to wake up, an opportunity to love ourselves even more by owning it, by seeing, like, look at what I've created in terms of how I am viewing and experiencing this world and this person. These are meanings that I have believed in and assigned to something that really ultimately is neutral and innocent. And if I could actually forgive myself for that, and I could experience all events and all people and all situations as neutral and innocent, whoa, what would be available then? Like, for real, what would really be available? Not only that, but what would flow? What would naturally flow instead of me thinking I need to be in control of it? It's like when I break a leg, I don't need to do anything in terms of healing it except for lay off it and rest and take care of myself. The healing happens on its own in the sense of an intelligence that knows exactly what to do to heal it. That same intelligence is what we can allow to heal us when we're willing to take care of ourselves in terms of self-reflection, in terms of self-honesty, in terms of really looking at ourselves and how we are experiencing life and everything in it, because that experience is not happening to us. That experience is a perfect byproduct of our choice in terms of how we have chosen to see ourselves, bottom line. So this, like I said, is what I'm up to. It's waking up to wholeness. It's been around since the beginning of time, but it's now I'm presenting it to people in a radical way that shifts transformation and personal development and all these things that have been out there and that have been used to try and promote more of the same social conditioning and sense of lack and more is better. And really, if you just ask yourself this, open your mind to this. If you are really living from a place of wholeness, do you think you would still be attracted to the same things you think you want and need right now? And here's a way to gauge that answer. If you got, and you can even use your history, when you got what you thought you wanted and needed, and that got taken away from you, let's say like in a breakup of a relationship, were you still able to maintain a perfect peace and happiness over it? Or was there heartache? And we go to like, well, heartache is normal, that's just the human experience. Not necessarily, that's a conditioned human experience. So heartache is really a sign of our unconscious hatred for ourselves. Because think of it, if we really are generating our own experience of everything, why would we do that to ourselves? Why would we experience pain and suffering and misery over something that can't even produce that? The only thing that can produce that is our choice to produce that. Our unconscious emotional identity to something that is going to generate that. So again, if you were really experiencing your wholeness for what it actually is, do you think you would be attracted to the same things you think you're attracted to now? Do you think you would still want the same things that you want now? Question to ponder. Peace.